This is Support is Sexy, episode 406, with leadership and wellness expert, Kwayera Archer. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here because you know it just would not be the same without you. And if you are a woman entrepreneur, a leader, a creative, if you are looking for a way to get the word out about your business and to share your message with new audiences day after day, consider podcast guesting. Podcasts are continuing to grow in popularity, and you need to get your voice out there. But I have a free guide for you so that you can be an unforgettable guest who gets invited back again and again. To download this free gift, I want you to go to girlonpodcastgift.com. That's girlonpodcastgift.com. A free guide on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest for all the right reasons. Now, today I am super excited about our guest. You know, all of the women who are on the Support is Sexy podcast are super successful. They're doing great things in their own way. Our guest today is Kwayera Archer, who has been extremely successful in her business. She ran an organization called Ifetayo, which she founded more than 25 years ago. She was the founder and CEO for 25 years and now is going into what I call her next chapter. But the organization is still going strong, successful, a multi-million-dollar award-winning organization. In fact, she received an award from former First Lady Michelle Obama. Here's the thing I love about her story, though, in addition to all of the great things that she's done. Kwayera talks to us about the importance of knowing that the road to success does not have to be paved with stress. Say it one more time. The road to success does not have to be paved with stress. And this was something that she learned later on. You know, it takes us time in our journeys to learn these things. But she really talks about her own journey to understanding that, to know that it didn't have to be as difficult, maybe as she chose for it to be at different times, or she didn't have to stress as much as she chose to stress at the time or allowed herself to stress at the time. And how today she helps other women know that work-life balance is possible, but there are things that you have to do and put in place in order to do that, including your tribe, which we know we love that because we're all about support is sexy. So I know you're going to be inspired by this conversation with Kwayera because I know a lot of you are pushing hard, doing what you can to make your business grow, to launch your business and do all of these things. There might be some stressful times, but you don't have to have stress be the way, the only way. All right, so now, without further ado, Kwayera Archer. So, Kwayera, thank you so much for being here on Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Wow, entrepreneurship was probably the love affair began, to be more specific, when I was really young and I saw my mom doing fashion shows for sickle cell anemia. She was a hematologist, and she was able to galvanize a whole bunch of celebrity designers to join in her effort to raise money for young Black children because she worked with blood at the hospital, and she saw how much money was not being contributed, to research, and she was really feeling the pain of these young children not being able to have the support they needed. So she dedicated her free time to research for sickle cell anemia, but she actually was able to use an entrepreneurial concept to be able to do that. So although she had her 9-to-5 job, she actually used her friends who worked at the hospital to support and buy tickets for fashion shows that she produced. And she got all of the designers to contribute their time and actually major musicians to come and perform. And she sold out houses doing this. And when I say houses, I mean theaters and rental halls. And that entrepreneurial spirit of running around and selling tickets and making sure people had a really good time doing something really fun while raising money for something really worthwhile and convincing people to, because they were getting something in exchange. So that is entrepreneurship, being able to sell something to someone. But at the same time, people didn't just walk away with a product or service. They also walked away feeling that they did something really, really good for other people. And so my entrepreneurial beginning was a little different in that sense, where it had that social emphasis on it.
What do you think inspired your mom? Well, we know what inspired her to do it, just what she was witnessing every day. But what do you think let her know that she could pull together something that was seemingly so outside of her day-to-day job and create these amazing events in order to benefit children? Was there something that you observed in her at that time?
Well, I think that my mom was a real go-getter. She was an immigrant, and she actually told me a story once. You know, she was schooled in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, and she came over when she was married. But being a newly arrived immigrant, she did not have the ability to start working right away in her field. And so being a hematologist, she had to go to school again. And what was really interesting is she told me a story about babysitting once and how she was really disrespected by the child. And I think it was her pride that let her know she can do anything she needed to do with all that she had in her hands at that time, because of the confidence that was instilled in her and the pride that she carried through her life. I think that was a major component.
Mm-hmm.
The self-belief.
The self-belief. So what was it then, or how old were you, I should say, at the time when your mother was hosting those events? Were you a young child at that time?
Oh my goodness, I was probably like 5 or 6 years old.
Oh,
and yeah, and the thing is that she dragged me in the fashion show. So I was also a model on the side, you know, she'd put me in print. And I think that was another contributing factor besides having me in the arts. She had me in modeling, like professional modeling. And I would run around with her. It wasn't like she had a staff. You know, she would put me in the back of the car and go from house to house, true entrepreneurial spirit, and sell these tickets. If you take 10, I'll give you one free. If you buy 20, you'll get a gift at the door. It was that real, I think it was just innate in her, that real go-getter entrepreneurial spirit. They say that entrepreneurial spirit is something that some people are just really born with. It's I can't fail attitude. I'm going to do this by any means necessary. And running around with her, I got that entrepreneurial spirit, honestly, because I would just, you know, be with my mom casually.
Observe her, right.
Observing, exactly. And it was natural. And she was with her friends and she was making money, not just for herself and the models, but for a really great effort. And I said, wait a minute, she's doing this and she's having fun and she's doing what she loves and she's also helping, but she's making money at the same time. That was inspiring to me.
Now, you mentioned that she also put you on the stage at a very young age, and I know you went on to become a ballet dancer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So she actually had me in fashion shows and modeling school from the time I was like 8 years old. And then in ballet classes from the time I was 4. And that was a response to her seeing me dance around the house. And I often tell people, look at your children, you know, and look at what they're doing, because that could be their destiny and you don't want to miss it. And I think my mom was what I call really awake. You know, where she was paying attention to what I did naturally, and she was able to move her own desires out the way. You know, we get very busy with what we want our children to do in our minds. And I think my mom, she just had an ability to say, okay, this child is a dancer. And although I started out as a dancer and had my career in dancing, it actually opened doors for me over time to actually move into what she may have secretly desired for me to do, be a business owner, be a leader. So that was really interesting because she followed her eye.
That's right. And I think that's such an important lesson or reminder for people with children or around children, teachers, even anyone, to really look at what the child is naturally drawn to. Because usually we have the list of, I know parents have the list of things that their kids have to be involved in, sports and a certain this, a certain that. But look and see what your kid is naturally drawn to. It might be something that surprises you.
Right, exactly.
So for you, what did the experience of being a dancer and being able to travel the world, how did that shape your own worldview?
Well, what's interesting is I was dancing from young and I was traveling from young because that's, it talks a lot about my mom, but my dad was in aviation. And so we flew for free, like from the time I could walk, right? So my parents, I had this wonderful opportunity and I felt very blessed to be able to travel the world consistently and be able to be trained in an art form that I wanted. And, what's interesting is that experience of traveling and dancing, doing what had my, I guess, spirit, my heart on fire, those two things together, as I grew, it really allowed me to see how many of my friends didn't have that opportunity. Right? Mm-hmm. They didn't have the ability to travel. They may not have been been able to be trained in what their heart desired. And over time, the impact that had on me is everybody is supposed to have this opportunity, not just some people. And I could say more than anything, that is over time, the impact that had on me. Wait a minute. I'm special, but I shouldn't be exclusive.
Right.
And how can I continue to grow over time? And I know I jumped forward to my adult life, but, and I could circle back to the teen years, but that's where it ended up for me. Why am I the only one getting, or one of few getting these opportunities? And that's how it kind of morphed into me creating something over time to enable and ensure that as many young people had that ability as well.
Now, did you go to college and study a certain thing in school, or did you go straight from being a dancer, traveling the world with your family, into creating an organization that really has changed a lot of the Brooklyn area, especially around the arts?
Right. So I became a professional dancer by the time I was 12 years old, and meaning being paid for it and doing more shows. And then I went to the FAME High School, the High School of Performing Arts. Yes, my alma mater when it was on 46th Street, right? The year
That's LaGuardia, right?
It's LaGuardia, yes. And so it was previously two different schools, music and art, which was much bigger, and then performing arts. And then after I graduated a couple of years later, they merged as one at Lincoln Center. But my high school at the time was on 46th Street, and it was really small. It's actually the building in the school they filmed the Fame in. And I was a ballet dance major. And training seriously all day in dance, and then going to dance rehearsals in the evening, and then joining Jubilation Dance Company after being the youngest on scholarship with Alvin Ailey when I was like 13 years old. And that was very, very serious training. And then I went to Hunter College and trained for a while in dance and did a lot of mathematics and astronomy, which is really, really interesting. My science side was taking over. But then I got an opportunity to travel and tour as a dancer. And so I decided to do that for quite a while and went back to school and did some study at home training. And then many years later, 2007, I went back for my grad degree in community economic development. A little twist there.
Wow, I love it. So well-rounded. It's such a reflection of your experience growing up.
Exactly.
Varied experiences and bringing them all together. So at what point then did you become inspired to create is it Ifetayo?
It's Ifetayo.
Ifetayo Cultural Arts Academy.
Yes, that was in 1989, and I was 24 years old. And it's a Yoruba word from West Africa meaning love is enough for joy. When we interpreted it for the little children, we said it meant love brings happiness because that was easier for them to interpret. And the reason it was named Ifetayo is in my travels and working with young people in schools. Well, let me just back up 1 minute and share that while I was still in high school, I actually again became one of the youngest to become an artist in residence in the public school system. Someone recommended me to go in and teach, and I think I was like maybe 19 years old, working alongside teachers as an artist in residence. So I'd go in for an hour, but I was able to work with children during school hours teaching dance. And it was at that moment that I realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm really good at this, where I can inspire young people to do an art form and feel creatively like they're expressing. But at the same time, something else came through for me that I was able to witness. And it was the fact that sometimes children were really down and going through a lot at home or in their community. And the art form was able to help them express what they might not otherwise ever express. And I felt sometimes like loads were just dropping off of their shoulders. And that was my probably first inclination and inspiration that I was going to work with children and open an entity.
What was it then, or I should say, what was then your first step in creating the organization after you had that very powerful inspiration and almost sounds like a calling or being pulled to create this for these children? What would you say was your first step?
Well, I think, first step as I could, it was a germination in my mind. So I continued to dance professionally and tour and so forth, but I would talk about it a lot. And I would share it with people. So it was like a dream, but it was a seed. And I was planting that seed, and people mostly were very, very supportive, which was really great because the more I talked about it, the more I aligned with and attracted the power of the word, my tribe.
That's right. That's
right?
How you have to do it.
And I didn't know intentionally. I just knew I couldn't contain it, right? And over time, some naysayers showed up, but I was so on fire that I had to talk about it, although I didn't implement it. And so I kept teaching, but and that helped me to develop at a very young age more experience. And the next step was literally speaking to a group of people in New York, some brothers actually, and I shared my dream with them. And they said, wow, we want to do the same thing. And I said, oh, great, let's partner together. And at that same time that I was talking with them, I went to a lawyer and consulted, and everything I had written down, I had shared with her, and we put it in some kind of a package, right? It wasn't a business plan, but it was a package. I would never forget her name, Lynn Terrelong, and she was an amazing support to me. But that, to back up a little bit, was born out of a session I had with one of the dance companies I danced with, Jubilation Dance Company, unique company, and we sat down as a team, and the choreographer, Kevin Jeff, said to all of us, where are you going to be in 10 years? I want you to write this down. And we were like, huh? Like we're in our early 20s, 10 years, I don't know. And it was at that moment that I was able to begin writing down what I needed to accomplish over that next decade. And Ifetayo, not the name of the organization, but the concept was written down. Then the next step was writing out all the details, going to the lawyer. I knew that from my father being an accountant, that you need to take it to someone and solidify it. So she began to help me define it, another mentor, coach, and then eventually I hired her to incorporate us. But that was the first step, to talk, build my tribe, and then make it official by documenting it legally.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was so powerful, that the way you shared your journey too, and those key steps. I'm all about it. You got to share it, let people know what your vision is, even when the naysayers come along. Sometimes they make it even stronger. You see how really committed you are, right? But I think it's so powerful too. Thank goodness for your dance teacher who had you all sit down and write out what you envisioned for yourself in the next 10 years. And I think something you said that was very important. You didn't know what it was going to be, and certainly not what it was going to be called, but you wrote out what your vision was for yourself, what the possibility, which is my word for the year, what the possibility could be. That I think is so powerful for anyone right now listening, no matter what age or wherever you are. You can sit down and write out what is your vision for yourself. And that could be the start of something that later you never know how it's going to turn out.
Absolutely. And just to take that a little further, over the years working with thousands of young people at the organization I eventually created, one of the things that I found most powerful, not just with young people, but with adults, is write out, we didn't take it out 10 years, but 5 years. Mm-hmm. What are the 10 things that you need to accomplish in 10 years, and then work your way back to year 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and what do you need to do in the first year to build up to make that 10th year dream a reality, right? You want to have X skill, but do you need in year 1 to start looking at schools or training opportunities to begin that journey for you to build those skill sets, right?
That's right.
And it makes it really practical. So that was one thing I learned that I have incorporated pretty much into almost everything I do, that I find has not failed me or people who I've been able to share it with.
What would you say then was the mission, or is still the mission of Ifetayo once you started it? What was the mission at its inception?
Well, because from very early on when I said that I had all of these abilities and it developed so much confidence in me, and my parents had the resources or networks to allow me to participate in that, I realized it developed a certain level of confidence in me that no one could tell me I couldn't do anything, in addition to my father telling me there's nothing I couldn't do, right? Mm-hmm. So that empowered me as a young woman in such a way that the mission that I created for Ifetayo was one that would instill pride, confidence, skill set, and expression. So it was one to work primarily with children of African descent and their families to provide creative avenues of expression and develop confidence through cultural awareness, because what I also found going into those schools as an artist in residence is children of color, children of African descent had not a clue of the contributions that their ancestors made to this planet. And so that was very important for me to tie that into the mission of Ifetayo, and it actually became the basis for all of the programming that developed. And the last component was really building families while building opportunities for education and increasingly providing opportunities for education. And that was the mission and still is today.
And still is. And this is now, 25 years later?
No, I resigned at 25, and that was 4 years ago. Next year, Ifetayo will be 30 years old.
Next year, it'll be 30 years old. Oh,
yes,
my goodness. How amazing is that, just to look back on what you created and the fact that it has been an institution, really, for all of that time?
It's humbling. It really is. And I know that I was able to do it through a high level of confidence and determination, but also mostly with my tribe. That same tribe I talked about, there's no way I could have done it on my own. I needed the core of people who supported me. And many of them stayed through the 25 years. What was really shocking for me is how many people wanted to support my vision because their vision and mission was similar, but they didn't want to start their own entity. They wanted to support what I had started, which was also, again, extremely humbling. I think we sometimes think everyone needs to compete and do their own thing. And sometimes we could just support each other and build beyond our wildest dreams.
So true. Well, we're all for it. Support is sexy here, but I think it's,
I love that.
thank you. So important though to mention, because just as you said, I think, of course, there's powerful, wonderful organizations in all different areas out there. But you just think, I'll speak for myself. I just think sometimes, wow, if these groups would come together and either work together, or everyone, as you said, doesn't have to start their own thing. A lot of times the vision is aligned, and if it works out, we could work together. So that's one of the things that I really try to encourage women to look at, ways of collaborating. Or if you have your own and I have my own, still, there are ways that we can come together, and it doesn't have to be about a competition. It can be really about working together to move everyone forward.
Absolutely. And what I actually experienced through that process is even the younger professionals coming and supporting, who stayed and received the kind of synergy and education that they needed, and opportunities for growth, not that they come in and we choke it so much that there's no room for people to express their genius. And that's another thing. When people are coming in to support, there needs to be avenues for them to share. And what I've seen through that process is I've been able to see folks grow into their own genius, right, in a way that they didn't even understand early on, through that opportunity of having the room to try things out and test and take risks in a safe environment while still being held to high standards and working together. I've seen many people come through Ifetayo and start something that Ifetayo eventually collaborated with, right? So, yeah, it's a very, very powerful community building tool, I'll say, that or just experience that I was able to be a part of.
Now, during your time there, you grew it into an award-winning organization and grew into a multi-million-dollar institution. So what would you say then, among all the things that you've shared with us, or maybe even something else, what would you say has been the key to your success?
Wow. I would say a super supportive circle and family, determination, and just living my passion. I would say that, and constantly developing my skill set, right? I didn't wait till I had all of the skills. I went in and did what I could with what I had, and I made sure I did it at an excellent level, and I always surrounded myself with really, really, really smart people, and people who always strived to be their best. And that's what I mean by smart, because smart is subjective. What does that really mean? It's almost like high, low. What people who strive to be their best, that would push me, that I think was one of the main components of making Ifetayo a success and me reaching my dream. Or at least one of my dreams.
One of your dreams, exactly. You're a woman of many dreams.
Yes.
What would you say for any entrepreneurs listening who are thinking about, or who currently have their own arts and cultural program or things like that, and they hope to have an impact even somewhere close to what you've been able to have? What would you say are 3 things that you'd want them to make sure of, or 3 things that you wish you had known when you started out on your journey?
Well, the 3 things that I think I could share with them include finding your core values and establishing those from day one, right? So that people who come in, you attract the right people to your movement or your entity. And then it's really clear then how it informs everything you do, how you communicate with your constituents or your customers, how you deal with your employees, it's so core to everything you do when you have those values strong, because even if you sell the business or you move on, if it's a nonprofit, the values that start from inception should be there forever. So that's really powerful. I would say that find your tribe would be number 2. And number 3, I would do 3 and a star, 3 and a cherry on top. But number 3 would be find coaches and mentors. It's really important to have those folks shepherding you in your life, and you can't really pay for that all the time, but find experts and show them you appreciate their time, right? So if they give you some time or open their Rolodex for you, send a card, and take them out for tea, say thank you. Those folks in my life opened many doors, and they always have people knocking on their doors. So it's the people that show appreciation authentically are the people they're going to continue to stick with. And the cherry on top is try to do a business and finance plan, no matter how simplistic it is. Try to do that.
What would you say? I think, well, first of all, that's great tips, all of them, including the cherry on top. But for the cherry on top, what would you say for people who are sometimes afraid of creating a business plan or a financial plan? Because I think what you just said, no matter how simple it is very important, because sometimes we let that hold us up for years that, I don't have a business plan yet. So how simple would you say it could be? Is it a matter of at least just getting it down on paper like you did, even though you didn't know it exactly what it was, and then taking it to someone who can help shape it for you?
That's exactly what I would say. The first step I would do, though, is just get it all out on paper. Mm-hmm. And then from that, look at your core values, right? Because the core values of a business usually are evidenced by what you've been doing. And if the business is new, you only have yourself. So if people say, okay, my 3 or 5 core values for my business include reliability. That's really difficult if you haven't been in business and you have nothing to test it, right? Mm. So you have to look at yourself for the first year or 2 or 3 to say, well, if I'm going to be the center of this business, what have I been able to do? Have I been reliable? And if you really haven't, I'm sure there are things that are really good that you have been doing, and then those actually become your core values of the business. And I would say starting there and then looking at the bigger picture, and the next thing after you write all that down is looking at how much money you really have to put into this entity, whether it's from your pocket, whether it's a loan, or whether it's individuals contributing. And that is really going to shape how much you get in kind, how much you get from sponsors, or how much you only have on your own, which will really give you clarity about what you can achieve month 1 to 3, month 4 to 6, and so on. And then the last thing I would say is ensure that you look at how much time you can realistically give and still maintain your personal commitments. Because when you're an entrepreneur, it's all about passion, right? But the rubber hits the road. What's the percentage of how many businesses actually survive in the first year? It's a very, very low percentage. Right. So, and it oftentimes is because they run out of money. They don't have guiding principles, the values. So then they start going every which way because wherever the money is or support, you just turn, as opposed to, no, I can't go down that road because that's not one of my values. Right. And then the third thing is, what about your friends and family? Do you start sacrificing those relationships for the business? Has your family bought into this, so that you don't lose them along the way in building the business? So those are the things I would recommend for creating the business plan.
Excellent advice. Excellent. And that's a perfect segue actually into what I'm calling, I don't know if you call it this, what I'm calling your next chapter. As you mentioned, you retired from Ifetayo and it continues to go on strong, but you are now an international speaker. And I know one of your primary topics is addressing women about work-life balance and determining how to handle both women entrepreneurs, I'm sure, just as you just mentioned, who have a tough time with balance. I know I certainly do.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you, well, first, what is it like for you now to sort of, I'm sure you were speaking and doing all of those things before, but now it seems to really be a concentration. So what is it like for you to make that transition for yourself?
It's extremely powerful. And if I may just share that I had so many friends, women who were amazing business owners and just so dedicated to the passion and mission of what they set out to do, and actually their destiny oftentimes, but put themselves last. And some of them have been sick, some of them gone to the next level. And that was something I was seeing more and more at like 50, 60, 65. Oh, wait a minute. These are healthy people jogging and running and eating healthy and, having great values, but working around the clock and not taking time out for themselves, getting sick or masking the sickness because they just were so driven for whatever reason. I mean, there's a myriad of reasons that I won't go into, that we listen to the messaging. And I go back to ensuring that you have your values, your personal values, not just the business values, but your personal values. And as the business matures, to have the business have its personal values and see where they merge together. I think that if people are able to do that, they will be able to prioritize. So people ask me about balance, and I'm like, yes, balance is possible, but it's only possible after prioritization happens, because we only have a certain amount of hours, a certain amount of energy, and a certain amount of dollars, right? And so what is balance really? I believe it's prioritizing. What are you going to what big things are you going to put in your bucket first to fill it? Right? Because if you put 100 little things, you're not going to have room for the big things that really matter to you. So what are the big things you're going to put in first? And then you see what you have space left for. And that really creates the balance.
One of the quotes on your website I saw, it says, quote, "We need to do a better job of putting ourselves higher on our own to-do list," end quote. And that was by the lovely Michelle Obama.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you, why do we as women often struggle to put ourselves first? As you mentioned, we're hustling and moving and doing amazing things in our business, but sometimes even masking, as I always find, the need for support, but also sometimes things more serious like illness. So why do you find that it's a struggle for so many of us?
Right. I think it's probably 2 to 3 things. One is historically, we have been passed those messages from generation to generation in our communities and families of survival and holding it together, particularly for your peers or your children, to really show that you're a stalwart and you can keep going no matter what, because if you showed a sign of weakness, the whole family would fall apart, or your community, or, it's really that heavy. I think the other thing is we're a lot of us are nurturers, right? We're very nurturing. So to find that balance between nurturing others and nurturing yourself, I think is something we're not really taught. We're as women, we nurture. That's just naturally what a lot of us do. And how do you change the messaging a bit to include or, rise to the top, nurturing yourself first so that you're healthy and well, to nurture family, community, customers, everybody, right? You've got to put yourself first as nurturers. And that's what I think why it happens a lot, because we just naturally, we want to take care of people. But then that compounded with the messaging from our parents that you can do it all. You're a superwoman.
Right. I always say, take off the superwoman cape. It's time to retire it.
And I say, and a lot of my retreats start out with exploring the superwoman myth.
Right. That's right.
Exactly.
So what would you say is a lesson or challenge in your own life that taught you the most important lesson about balance, work-life balance, or just putting yourself first?
Oh, that's so funny. Which one? Okay,
which one, right? Share one of them with us.
Right, one. Well, I was pregnant, and many, many years ago, my children are big now, and I was really driven, right? Like most entrepreneurs. And I was in that whole cycle of telling you what not to do. So I was there. Experience is the best teacher. And I remember getting ready to open this 12,000 square foot, 4 loft studios space in Flatbush, Brooklyn for like hundreds of children. And I was pregnant on a ladder painting. Wow. Like that's how driven I was, right? And we opened, but I wasn't getting sleep. Thank God my child is like, okay, he's fine. He was the baby. He's the last one. But I was so driven that even after he was born, I was just working to keep this space going, that and the business, that I actually got really sick. And I think for me, that was a turning point, but not because I even got it. It's because that circle of friends, the core group that I said, find your tribe, they sat me down and they said, something has to come off your plate. I know this this is your destiny, but guess what, girlfriend? Destiny.
They want you to be around to see it.
You will not be here. And people often ask me, if you were not that driven, would you have succeeded? Would you have been able to get to the White House one day, right? And receive the nation's top honor from Michelle Obama? Would you have been able to do those things? And I said, probably, if I had more coaching on self-care and being a little bit more vulnerable to share. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I just think that's so powerful because I know a lot of us think, well, you did all of that and that brought you to the point where you are at the White House getting an award from Michelle Obama because you were on the ladder pregnant and doing all of those things. But the fact that you said you feel like you still could have been as successful in a different or using a different method.
Yes.
Is so powerful for people to hear that it doesn't have to be that way where you're, as we have talking about, putting yourself last and sacrificing everything to make it work. There's a way to do it with coaching and other kinds of support to help you. And
is the name of your podcast, like support. It's like we are not really taught that. And a part of me going out into the world, and I literally travel like every other week, just really sharing with women and executives and leaders and entrepreneurs about support and trusting each other, but moving from a place of core values, because I'm not saying that things don't rise and we don't bite each other in the back, but it's time to really begin putting a magnifying glass on that and disintegrating it, and getting rid of it, putting it in the sunlight and saying, this is not cool. Where are we getting these messages from? And how do we begin to try and trust and move from a place of values?
Now, when your friends sat you down in that moment, were you able to hear that message? Because I know sometimes, it might need to come a few times or from a different person or what have you. So I'm just curious for you, what was your experience like in that moment?
I was broke down. That's what
you were glad to hear.
I was broke down. I was weak. I was sick. I was tired. I was there. I unfortunately had almost hit rock bottom, and my health was off. People see me now and say, "Wow, are you really going to be 53 this year? You are so healthy looking." And I'm like, "Yeah, I had to. I almost, thank God." I had that lesson, but I didn't have to go there. And that's what I'm trying to share with women and executives now. There is another way.
There is another way. Now, you mentioned your retreats that you do, which I'm super excited about. So tell us about your, I know there's an upcoming one in Jamaica in March, I believe, right?
Yes, March 22nd through the 25th in Ocho Rios. So we might even visit another parish or two. But it's really about taking 3 full days to, as I talk a lot about, revisiting your personal core values. And we go through an entire curriculum around that to take space and time to check back in to see what at this pace and phase in my life is really, really important to me. That is a non-negotiable. That is going to drive every decision I make. And so we start from there. And then literally people come out saying, I'm ready to go to work and ask for a promotion, or I'm ready to leave my job and actually have a blueprint to do that. Or say, I don't want to live where I'm living. Tomorrow's not really promised. What do I need to put in place in a reasonable and attainable amount of time to move myself or my family to a place where I have joy and not waiting till I retire? What do I have to let go? And so we go through the first day really meeting and connecting and going over values. The second day, we roll up our sleeves and dig deep into the curriculum. And intermittently throughout the day, we have healing exercises and little things little treats that happen to reaffirm wellness. And then we go away, we do a little homework that night, and the next day we come and we begin charting out our blueprint, our plan. And one thing that's really important to remember that I always remind my retreat attendees of is that this is a blueprint, but there is eraser. You can adjust it. You can modify it every day. It doesn't have to be rigid because we're not rigid. Mm-hmm. We're fluid. Yeah.
We're fluid. I love that. Now, how can people find out more about the retreats? Of course, I'll have a link to all of your information, but the retreats in particular, I know people are going to be excited to hear about.
Right. So they could go to my website under immersions, and my website is www.Kwayeera.com. And they can find everything right there under retreats and immersions.
Excellent. So, Kwayera, what would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Oh my gosh, that I am flexible, that I am ever able to recreate, regenerate, rebirth, and be reinvigorated at every single moment that comes.
So in closing, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Wow, that's so easy. That would be my mom. And I would say thank you for being awake as a parent to see what my destiny was supposed to look like and supporting that selflessly. And also selflessly. I mean, throughout, she just showed me how to support as a parent, showing up to every single show, being tired, no matter what. I would say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Beautiful. Yes, thank you. On behalf of all of us, thank you, Mom, for shaping
Violet Archer. Yes.
Violet, Miss Violet. Thank you, Miss Violet. Now tell us, what are the ways that we can support you, your website again, and anything else that you want everyone to know about, social media, all that good stuff.
Right. So I'm on Instagram, and I'm going to the same name across all platforms. Excuse me. Twitter and Facebook as Kwayera Archer. That's again Kwayera and Archer. Please follow me, and we're starting on a new initiative in February where we're going to be putting out a lot of tidbits for folks to follow and be inspired by. So please definitely support in that way and share the information you get with others.
Excellent. Is that going to be via an email list or is that on your social media where you're going to share that information?
Social media as well as email lists. Thank you for clarifying both. But people who are on the email list will get some specials at times for different events, whether I'm showing up, doing a retreat or a speaking engagement in your city. I'll be offering that through email. So when you join the email list, yes, on the website.
Excellent. So everyone, make sure you sign up so you can find out all of the great retreats and everything that's going on. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I'm inspired by our conversation, so I know our listeners will be. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your journey in the ways that you do.
I thank you so much for having me, and it was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Oh, wow. Have fun. Take time and take care.
Beautiful. Kwayera, thank you so much. Hold on just a second. All right. I hope you were inspired by that conversation with Kwayera. To find out more about her, to find out more about the retreats she mentioned, to get in touch with her, to invite her to speak at your organization or your event, just go to supportissexypodcast.com, go to the search icon at the top and search Kwayera. Kwayera. Her show notes page will pop up with all of the links, the resources, and the ways to get in touch with her. Supportissexypodcast.com and search Kwayera. Again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Make sure that you download that gift on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest. I'm telling you, podcast guesting is the way to spread your message. girlonpodcastgift.com. Again, girlonpodcastgift.com. And if you want to let me know what you thought about this episode, let Kwayera know what you thought about this episode, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a review wherever you're listening, or make sure you follow on social media at Elayne Fluker, at Support is Sexy. I would love to chat with you. All right, again, thank you for being here. As I always say, it would not be the same without you. And until we chat again, always remember, you deserve support. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.